On this week's On .net, I have my good friend Eric Sink on, the one and only, celebrating 1 billion downloads of SQLitePCL.raw, the SQLite under the hood that everyone uses. And Eric's going to go deep on everything that you need to know, so tune in. Hey everyone, I'm James, and I'm here with my good friend Eric. How's it going, buddy?
Very well. How are you?
I am doing very well. I just opened up the SQLitePCL.raw profile on NuGet and 1 billion downloads. Did you even know that, of all the packages?
I guess when you combine all the packages, it might be that high. I usually only count the core package, so I don't exaggerate the number.
A few 100 million is still pretty decent. I will say that. Over 300 million of the core repo of SQLitePCL.raw core. And, I've talked to you for many, many moons, and obviously people may know me for my work with Frank Krueger, who has an ORM on top of this. And if anyone's done any .NET database stuff ever, especially in mobile world, but in non-mobile world as well, everyone at some point in their life has used your NuGet packages, Eric. Like, that is a fact. Like, it's almost as synonymous as Newtonsoft.json, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? Like, you, James Newton King, everyone under the hood is using these things at some point. But unlike, JSON deserialization, the SQLitePCL.raw is kind of this under the hood package that I actually don't understand myself. I think only like you and Frank Krueger understand what's actually happening under the hood. And yet it's so important. So I wanted to have you on to talk about the work that you've done with the open source community and the work that you do outside of this, and how people can understand why it's so important and how it all comes together and how they could even contribute to it. That's why I wanted to have you on, Eric. What do you think about that?
Well, I appreciate that. And I appreciate the chance to just shine a little bit of a light on this project. It is, like you said, kind of an under the hood thing. Sometimes the way I describe it is like soybeans. Everyone eats soybeans, but very few people eat them by themselves. And I'm pleasantly surprised how many people use SQLitePCL.raw, even though so few people actually use it directly. So it has turned into a popular thing, lots of downloads, and yet, since it's mostly a dependency of things that other people use directly, a lot of people don't know it's there. Sometimes they don't know it's there until it causes them a problem. So,
well, let's talk about, because I think a lot of people know SQLite, and I think some people have heard of SQLite PCL or things like that, especially when PCLs were a thing. But like, how are these things different? Like, what is PCL? SQLitePCL.raw, and like, how does it actually relate to SQLite itself?
So SQLite itself is a native code library, and I, at the risk of making a slight tangent here, I must say that we're recording this on the 28th of May. The 29th, tomorrow, is the 25-year anniversary of SQLite.
Wow.
Which is an amazing accomplishment for D. Richard Hipp and his team. I'm excited about that. I have to give that plug, because as ubiquitous as my package has become, SQLite itself is so much more ubiquitous. It is in everything.
Everything. It's
amazing.
Like literally on your phone, in your browser. It is everywhere that you could possibly imagine.
Yes. So, but SQLitePCL.raw is really just a .NET wrapper for that native code library. And it started out back in the days, as you said, when PCL was a thing. I guess we pronounced it pickle back then.
That's right.
And there was a project called SQLite PCL that was maintained by somebody else, and it kind of got left in the lurch. And so I picked it up and started maintaining it at first as a dependency of one of our other products. And it's sort of taken on a life of its own, in part because Microsoft's own ADO.NET library, called Microsoft.data.SQLite, uses my wrapper as a dependency. And that, of course, has contributed to the sheer number of downloads of my package.
Yeah, it's sort of one of those things where everybody needs it because it is everywhere. But yet, especially as a .NET developer, like, I don't want to be accessing the raw underlying APIs. Like it's sort of like if I'm using Blazor, I pretty much just want to write everything in C#. I don't really want to write the JavaScript. I would like for someone else to wrap that JavaScript library up very nice and expose it for me in a beautiful package. But it's also, this isn't an ORM. Like this isn't like, I'm not going to install this package and use it directly, or am I?
You're not. And in fact, I'm going to show on my screen in a moment here what the code looks like to use SQLitePCL.raw directly, which, by the way, another tangent. My project has the worst project name ever, and I'm a little bit proud of that, actually. I can't imagine a worse name than SQLitePCL.raw. But anyway, I have a code snippet to show what it's like to use it directly and why no one does that. And then, I can compare that to the ADO.net way of using it, which is so much more pleasant and familiar for Microsoft developers.
All right, cool. Let's take a look.
Cool. So here on my screen is a code snippet of the way SQLitePCL.raw is used when it's used directly. And basically, the reason why it's so hostile to use is that it is intentionally designed to very closely mimic the SQLite native API itself in all of its C-based glory. So, for example, here, the call SQLite3_open is a regular C call from the SQLite native library. The only real difference here is that I've got, it's sitting in a namespace or a static class actually called raw, and but it in other ways it mostly functions the way the original C API did. So it returns an integer return code which needs to be checked, and all SQLite calls work that way. It doesn't throw exceptions. It's tedious, and it's designed this way so that I'm not imposing any particular policy on the upper level wrappers that would make use of this library. But these are the very reasons why no one uses this directly. It's just frankly unpleasant, and it's not designed to be pleasant.
Yeah, it's unopinionated. It's a one-to-one mapping in many ways. So people that want to build on top of this have it in a nice, friendly sort of way of doing that.
Exactly.
So that way, else if this didn't exist, then every single person that wanted to do any SQLite stuff would have to go figure out like how to interop with C, basically.
Right. That's really the value add here, is that it's trying to solve that C interop layer problem, but also to solve the problems around the fact that SQLite is not one library; it's often multiple instances of the library. We have different forms of it. There are forms with and without cryptography. There are forms with special features compiled in or out. There's the one installed with your OS, and then there's the one that's bundled with your app. And SQLitePCL.raw tries to support all of those cases, and that makes it even a little more complicated than the usual native interop scenario for a .NET library.
Yeah, because you have here not only like the core raws, but you have an iOS one, an Android one. You have these different variants, like you're saying, that are specific because of how kind of the actual SQLite, I assume, is like actually on the device and how it's actually accessed.
Exactly. So this is that was the raw version, just to show something a little more familiar as a breath of fresh air. This is the way people mostly use SQLitePCL.raw, is using Microsoft.data.SQLite. So ADO.net is just far more familiar to C# and .NET developers. And in fact, to be fair, many people use a layer even above this by using Entity Framework instead of ADO.net directly. Nonetheless, this is a much more C-sharpy way of doing things.
Yeah, and this is great. So here, right, it's creating a connection to the SQLite itself. It's opening that connection. It's creating a command. It's going to execute that command and then read it back. And you're right. Like I am totally one layer up. I'm always in their SQLite net PCL.net, whatever Frank's library is, or Entity Framework as well with the SQLite connector to it as well. So you're used to it. But under the hood, those are just like this are using the raw to actually do those raw commands to SQLite.
That's right. The Frank's library is another one I could have shown. I don't have it prepped, but SQLite-net, and he has various forms of that package, also has the ability to use SQLitePCL.raw as a dependency. And SQLite-net is another way that is very popular for people to use SQLite from C#.
Yeah, especially when you're like, especially on mobile devices, maybe not doing Entity Framework. But the nice thing here is, like, I think the point that you're trying to get across and what I'm reading is whoever created those libraries, whether it's this Microsoft Data SQLite, Frank's library, other libraries, Entity Framework, they didn't have to worry about the C stuff at all. They just were able to all use that nice, beautiful, raw wrapper around all of it that you created.
That's right. And in general, that has worked out worked out well. I think most people who are writing that kind of a wrapper find the API that my library provides to be a pretty good fit. And then, as I said, most people who try to use it directly find it to be a pretty bad fit. And that to me means I've achieved the goal I wanted to achieve.
It's great for some use cases and not great for other use cases. And that's okay.
That's right.
So,
that's right.
Well, what else about this library is out there? Like, I know it's been open source, I think, since the beginning, right?
It has. As I said, I think it started. It's been over 10 years and my memory is a little fuzzy here, but I believe it started actually as a project by a group called Microsoft Open Technologies, MS Open Technologies, which was a group inside Microsoft, as I recall. And they, I believe what happened is that in the transition towards PCLs, it kind of got left by the wayside. And that's when I sort of stepped in and said, hey, does anybody mind if I fork this? And I started maintaining it. And, as I said, it just kind of grew a little bit from there.
So what is its current state? Like, where's the future of SQLitePCL.raw, or how could people get involved in it?
So the current state is that I am looking to the future a bit and asking myself some questions about sustainability. I'll be honest, this has been going on for about 10 years. And because of the fact that it's so behind the scenes and under the covers, or whatever you want to say there, it's not in everybody's face. And so I have not always done a good job asking the community to help support this project. And so I'm trying to do better. And one of the reasons that I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today is so that I can present that appeal and ask the community to consider supporting the project in a few ways that I can suggest, and so that I can continue to support it for the long term, because it has been so very popular in indirectly.
Yeah. Well, what are some of those ways? I mean, obviously, I think sometimes, like you're saying, especially with this library, some people are using a lot of things on top of it. So they're often going to those projects' GitHubs to like report problems and do stuff like, obviously it's on GitHub, but is that the best way to like find information or like report issues or like contribute to it, or where's the place to start?
Certainly, SQLitePCL.raw does have a GitHub page, and people do end up there at times to post questions or problems, usually about integration with specific instances of the library or something like that. But that GitHub page is also one place where you can find ways to support the project. And so the most direct way is that I have GitHub sponsors set up. So if people want to support the project financially using that mechanism, then that is available. And I'll take that opportunity to thank you, James, for being one of those supporters.
Yep.
Appreciate that.
I've used it for 10 years. I figured I could at least throw you a few bones for all the amazing work that it's brought me back for it. So between
That
you
is
and Frank, your code is in every single one of my apps that I've ever created. So
very kind of you. Um, Other things I'll mention are simply ways that you could support SQLitePCL.raw by doing business with my company, which is called SourceGear. And there's a couple of ways to do that, and I'll just invite inquiries. But if you want to discuss these with me, by all means, folks can feel free to reach out. One of them is that we do a lot of custom software development work, and you can support my work by supporting my company by engaging with us to help build or maintain software for you. We do custom software applications, a lot of mobile apps, including both .NET as well as the native Java and Swift stacks for iOS and Android, as well as a fair amount of backend and cloud stuff. We're generalists in that regard, and we're available for projects. And so I want to mention that opportunity.
yeah, totally. I think that's a great way because this isn't like your full-time job, right? Of just supporting and running SQLite PCL.raw. This is sort of, you do a lot for it, but like many open source contributors and open source library creators, kind of doing this out of a love and a passion. And then, yeah, you have a full-time gig and a whole company that you're running.
That is true. SQLite PCL.raw is not a revenue stream for us. It is a community activity, and it's one that I hope raises the visibility of our company for the kinds of business endeavors that we undertake. But as you say, the bills have to be paid, and the payroll has to get made. So,
well, perfect. So over at the main SQLitePCL.raw, I put a link to that in there. I also put a link to your guys' main website, SourceGear. Anything else people should know about SQLite PCL.raw before we get out of here, Eric?
I guess one or two other things I would toss in. One is that we can also make available what we call support agreements if you are needing the kind of structured support for using SQLite with .NET, where you would want a phone number to call. We could be an option, and we do sell those kinds of agreements, and I can discuss those possibilities with anyone who's interested. And then, a little announcement that I'm pleased about is that as part of my work with SQLite and .NET, I've recently joined the SQLite core team.
Awesome.
Now, this is not an employment change. I am staying with SourceGear, and so for that reason, since all the other SQLite core developers are employees of D. Richard Hipp, he refers to me as an adjunct, somewhat like an adjunct faculty at a university or something like that. But this is a bit of a partnership of sorts between SourceGear and the SQLite organization, where we can pick up some of these opportunities and services that are outside of scope for them, including maintenance of various .NET things that he has as well. And so I am getting even more involved with the SQLite and .NET world by taking on some of those responsibilities as well. But it has been a good place to play, and I intend to continue doing it.
This is awesome. That's really awesome. Congratulations. And I'm lucky to have you. And I'm really excited. It's really, kind of the future, the next steps of SQLite on .NET and PCL and everything that's happening with the raw and beyond that. So this is really cool to see and to hear. And of course, I'll put links to everything in the show notes. And I know that, especially for a lot of big enterprises, that additional support contract is so important too. So definitely great to call that out and put links below for everything. Eric, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me here. And it's been good to be with you.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what's next. So that's going to do it for this on .NET. I'll put links below to everything at all. So go check out the project on GitHub, SourceGear, and everything else happening in Eric's world and SQLite world as well. And of course, if you're over here on the .NET YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you stay up to date with everything we put out here right on the .NET YouTube. So until next time, I'm James. Thanks for watching.